Now that Big Brother is over and we're lamenting how reality television has just gone downhill over the years and we've really just jumped the shark now, I wanted to tell you about a time that reality television was done right. And this is a modern example, so you can't use the excuse of like, oh, well, it's the digital age that killed reality television, because no, this happened recently. This happened on season 22 of The Amazing Race, and I think it is enough to convince anyone to watch the show. This is the story of the team that was eliminated with an express pass. For context, in The Amazing Race, they're racing around the world for $1 million, and the race is broken up into multiple legs. It's usually around like 11 teams of 2, so 11 duos. And each leg is in a different city in like a different part of the world. In every leg, the teams all have tasks they need to complete in order to get to the checkpoint at the end of the leg, or the pit stop. And the ultimate goal is to not come in last at the pit stop, because if you are last to arrive at the pit stop at the end of the leg, you are, most often, eliminated. And this continues until there's only 3 teams left and they race for like a finale and then they win, whatever. The finale is not important, not in this story. There's a few different types of tasks they have to complete during the legs, but there are 2 main types that you need to know. There's a roadblock in which the team is given a task and the duo has to decide which one of them has to complete it. And there is a detour in which the team is given 2 tasks and they have to choose the lesser 2 evils to complete together. So that's all the context you need. Now we can get into the story. Amazing Race, Season 22, Leg 1. At the end of Leg 1, a team named Jessica and John got first at the pit stop. And for their valiant efforts, they were rewarded an express pass. The express pass is pretty powerful in The Amazing Race. If you are approaching a task or in the middle of a task and you're like, I don't want to do this, you can just whip out the express pass and just completely skip it. Any one task of your choosing, and you can skip any one task for a good chunk of the race, like a good, maybe 5 weeks, 5 legs. And because you hold on to the express pass for that amount of time, there comes a stipulation with it. You don't want to use your express pass on a task that you think is hard at the time, and then you get to the next leg and you're faced with a task that's even harder. And you're thinking like, damn, wish I had the express pass right now. So you'll see a lot of teams get to a task and be struggling with it, and they'll be like, I want to use the express pass, but I don't know if I should. And they shenanigans ensue. So there is valid reason to hold on to express pass even if you're struggling during a task, because you don't know what's ahead of you. And if you use express pass in one leg and you get to the next leg and you struggle there and you're stuck, you could eventually get last and then get eliminated. So Jessica and John have this express pass and they get into leg 4 where they go to Mali. And right off the bat, these people aren't really the brightest crayons in the crayon box. They open up their clue and it's a detour, and they decide which one they want to do. And let's say they choose detour A, just for simplicity's sake. Their clue tells them that they have to go to a certain place in Mali to complete their task. So they're on their way to go to the detour, and they somehow end up in someone's backyard. And they start talking to the locals that are living in the houses that they are just walking in the backyards of. They even start making some kind of craft on the ground in the backyard of these houses. The Amazing Race usually has their tasks at a proper location, but they were just completely off the road and completely off the path. Just making a little paper boat craft in Joe's backyard. Eventually they clue in and realize, oh, we're not where we're supposed to be. And so they scurry on along to where they needed to go, but just know right off the bat that they are not smart. And at this point, they've already taken a detour on the detour, and they could be definitely falling behind teams at this point. Seems like an opportune time to use the express pass, right? Wrong. They want to try the task first and see if the other teams are there doing the task with them. They can kind of see where they're at in the race. So they get to the detour, start working on it, and they start struggling. And then teams just start passing them. And Jessica's getting worried at this point. She's asking John, should we use the express pass? I don't know where we're at in the race right now. It's not looking good. And John says, no, I want to be smart about this. I want to try to complete this task. Let's not use it. So they still don't use the express pass. This ended up being the wrong decision because they keep going at this detour and they just cannot get it. And then they make the bold choice of switching detours, which is fully allowed. Like, if you're in the middle of a detour and you're not vibing with it, you can go and do the other detour if you'd like. In fact, you can go back to the other detour that you skipped the first one if you really wanted to. It's happened more times than you would think. But if you're, say, half an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours into a task and you cannot get it and you come to realization you can't get it and you have to switch, that changes your game. That means you have wasted all of your time up to this point and now have to start from scratch. But Jessica and John do it anyway. They decide to switch detours, and so they drive to detour B. And on the drive to the detour, Jessica's asking John, yet again, should we use the express pass? She's saying things like, I don't know if we're in last, but we might be in last. We're somewhere near the bottom, etc., etc. But John still won't cough it up. They get to the detour. They don't use the express pass. They complete detour B. Good for them, but they still have to do the roadblock. And I know what you're thinking. Are they going to use the express pass on the roadblock? Take three guesses. Take 3 guesses. They get to the roadblock and there's teams still there. Thank God. But they still don't use the express pass. And John brilliantly decides that he's going to do the roadblock. But while John is doing the roadblock, teams are, once again, just passing him by. And when they were doing Detour A earlier, and I said, oh, teams were passing them, I meant like 1 or 2 teams, I think, passed them. When John was doing the roadblock, it was like 5 teams passed him. And this is the last task of the leg. After the roadblock, it's the pit stop. And most racers are aware of the structure of the race, and so it's common knowledge that after the roadblock, this is it. Last to finish it is going to be eliminated most likely. And yet, that urgency is still not enough to knock any sense into John's head. One team passes him and checks into the pit stop. He doesn't use the express pass. Another team checks into the pit stop. He doesn't use the express pass. And on and on and on. And Jessica is sitting at the sideline just watching this unfold and just tearing her hair out. She's saying things like, I don't know what he's doing. We can't be eliminated this early. Like, we have an express pass still. And I would pay any amount of money to know what was going on in that man's mind. It gets to the point where there's only 2 teams left. Winona and Chuck, and Jessica and John. Winona and Jessica are sitting on the sidelines while Chuck and John do the roadblock. And Winona looks at Jessica and is like, so we're last, aren't we? And Jessica's like, yeah, but I really don't want to get eliminated here because we still have an express pass. And I'm genuinely shocked she was so patient with him up to this point. For context, the roadblock was they had to look through a collection of surfboards and they had to find one surfboard that had a design on it that was something they saw earlier in the race. So Chuck and John are on the race against each other for this one surfboard. Well, there's multiple copies of it, but the one type of surfboard. Both of them are taking boards to the pit stop to Phil, and Phil is checking their answers and telling him either oh yes, that's correct, here's your placement, you can check to the pit stop, or that's not correct, you have to go and get another one. So Chuck and John are just going to the pit stop with just different boards, and they'll show Phil, and he'll be like, that's not correct, that's not correct, that's not correct, and they have to keep just going back. Chuck eventually gets the right one, and he and Winona check into the pit stop, leaving Jessica and John in last place. And at that point, you think it's over, right? You're the last one. You're not checked at the pit stop. Everyone else is already checked in at this point. It's like, pencils down, walk away, accept the loss. But John still wants to find the right surfboard. The sun literally sets on him while he's looking for this surfboard. At this point, the teams have well checked into the pit stop and are now staying in their motel and are talking to each other or strategizing, maybe getting a good night's sleep. And Lunatic John's still looking for the fucking surfboard. And this is where I start to crack up. So the sun's set. He meets back up with Jessica and he says, I want to go look over there. He says, I want to go search over there. And the camera cuts to Phil and the greeter, some random person they get from the country of choice to greet the person who gets to the pit stop. Phil and the greeter are just sitting at the pit stop, just fucking waiting. I don't know what Phil Kogan gets paid, but it's not enough to deal with John. He brings board like number 375 to the pit stop, and Phil's like, I'm sorry, that is not correct. And behind Phil and the greeter, there's a lovely little display of surfboards. And John sees this display and he thinks, oh, I haven't checked there. And so he says to Phil, like, I want to look behind there. And Phil says, you're not allowed to look at those surfboards. You're not allowed to look at those. I'll never forget those words. And at this point, Phil's done. The greeter's half asleep. It's probably like 10 o'clock at night. Like, just call it a day. But I'm telling you, this man is a different breed of insane. He's still looking for the motherfucking surfboard. Finally, he finds the right one and brings it to the pit stop. And while he's just la-da-dotting along, trying to find the surfboard, he's making little fun comments like, we really learned a lot about beach culture. This is a cool-looking surfboard. As if in, like, the last team hadn't checked in, like, 5 hours ago? Like, this man is just straight up not on planet Earth. But finally, him and his poor girlfriend Jessica get to the pit stop with the right board. God knows how late at night. And Phil says, that is the correct board. And you are the last team to arrive. Like, yeah, you didn't need to tell us that one, Phil. And unfortunately, you have been eliminated from the race. And he adds on, I think this is the first time that I've seen a team get eliminated with an express pass. And, like, it is crazy to think about because it took 22 seasons for this to happen. 22. This isn't your average fuck-up. But John's got the widest grin on his face in the whole world. And he's saying things like, I don't really see the purpose in, regretting choices that you have no control over. I see no point in that. And Phil goes, really? And John says, yeah, I don't need $1 million. And he's standing there, he's still smiling. Meanwhile, his poor girlfriend Jessica is standing there next to him, looking like she's regretting all of her life choices. Needless to say, they were brought back for another season.